Welcome to the Global Discussions with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. My name's Simon Hodgkins, and I'm delighted to be joined by Liza Donnelly. Liza, you're very welcome to the podcast. Let's begin by asking you to introduce yourself to our worldwide audience. So over to you, Liza.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and get to know you a little bit. I am a writer, cartoonist, and I've been doing that for my whole life. I mean, I started as a kid drawing cartoons. But it's been my professional life too for 40 some years. And I don't know how to capsulize it, but I also gave a TED talk in about 10 years ago about using humor for change. And that's one of my passions, is using humor. Well, I mean, humor has many uses to entertain, but also to make people, to connect people and to make people discuss things. It's about ideas and dialogue. That's how I see drawing cartoons, and political sometimes, but also cultural, because we all share similar things in our lives. And I've been with the New Yorker magazine for my whole career, and do a lot of things for a lot of other people too. I've written and edited 18 books, and I'm looking at some notes to remember to tell you things. One of my passions is I'm a member of something called Cartooning for Peace, which is an organization based in Paris, and it's not about drawing cartoons about peace per se. It was started by Jean Plantu, and I was one of the first cartoonists to be part of the group in 2005. Started at the UN in New York after the Danish cartoon controversy. Kofi Annan was aware that cartoons were very powerful, and he loved cartoons, so he brought a bunch of us together to talk at the UN about the power of cartoons and the problems with cartoons. And from there, I've just been a part of that group, and we give talks around the globe. They have exhibits. It's a way to talk about political ideas internationally, and it's a way to, through Cartooning for Peace, I've met so many international cartoonists and learned about their worlds through their cartoons, often because I can't talk to them, that we speak a different language, but we speak the same language visually. So that's been like, along with the New Yorker, that's a core part of my world is international cartoons. So.
Listen, thank you very much indeed for sharing that with us. I mean, your achievements, your tenure within this industry is nothing short of magnificent. It's wonderful. I admire the work that you put out, and I love the fact that you use the term as well, visual journalist, don't you? Mm-hmm. Maybe you could unpack that a little bit for me, because I've been talking to a number of artists, not necessarily in your world where you're writing for very well established and well known global publications, and producing cartoon structured work, but your ability to tell a topic that might be political, cultural, sensitive, important, humorous, to a global audience as a visual journalist, I think it's one of the ultimate skills, because you don't have the luxury of paragraphs and paragraphs of text or a video. You're telling it within almost a snapshot.
Yeah.
So could you maybe talk a little bit about that side of things and that visual journalistic approach?
It's a long, complicated subject, or can be. When I was young, I was very shy and quiet, and I was suspicious of words, so I tended to draw visual ideas. I'll turn my phone off, it's making noise. Visual ideas, and that's how I communicated with my parents and then with my schoolmates, is to draw pictures and about what I was seeing or understanding. And then actually, I happened to live in Rome for a year when I was in high school, so with my family, and I learned about international cartoons and their ability to use drawings and humor without words. It's because so many European countries, they are wordless, and many European cartoonists and international cartoonists are such masters at using visual metaphors and beautiful drawings to talk about ideas in pictures. And so that's been my model, is trying to use that. And also, I grew up during Watergate And I was inspired by the political cartoonists of that time, like Gary Trudeau and Herb Block for the Washington Post. And I really wanted to be a political cartoonist because I wanted to help the world. Very idealistic young woman, and I wanted to use my drawings to do that. And at the time, I felt that political cartoons were too opinionated and too loud, and I didn't think I could be a part of that. It's not my personality. So I looked at the New Yorker, and the New Yorker has always had political cartoons. So I started submitting to them when I finished college, and they accepted my work. So that was a thrill. But so I've learned over the years how to draw cartoons that are about cultural and political issues that aren't I'm not yelling my opinion at anybody. I'm commenting on something, or I'm sharing something with somebody, because I think, and particularly now, since we've learned that cartoons can be catalysts for real problems and real and death and riots and things like that. And I'm not blaming the cartoonists, but I'm saying they can cause problems, or they can be catalysts for problems. And so my feeling is, as a cartoonist, as a visual artist, it's sort of my responsibility to think about that. I mean, I'm very lucky that I have freedom of expression. I live in the US, and I'm fortunate that I can do what I want to do, but I don't think that I need to draw everything just because I can. There are other ways to express ideas without insulting other people or being mean or whatever. That's my kind of cartooning. I do think we need really powerful cartoonists to go after our leaders and wherever we are, to hold them accountable. That's incredibly important. I'm not that kind of cartoonist so much, but yeah, so that's when I say visual journalism, that's partly what I mean, that using cartoons as dialogue and talking about issues, but also, and you've seen me do this on social media now, I do something that is really what I call visual journalism, which is live drawing when I'm out in the world doing things or attending events. And I live draw my tablet quickly and share it on social media. And so it's a way of showing my followers and people out there on the internet what I'm experiencing, what I'm seeing. And it could be like you just commented to me before this broadcast about drawing on the subway. So I draw on my phone with my finger on the subway, but I also do it on my iPad at cultural and political events. And I've done this for the New Yorker. I've done it for CNN and CBS News and a lot of some other media outlets to report on what's going on with visuals and some words sometimes. So and I love doing it. It's a way for people to see things that I experience or share with people what I'm experiencing. Either I've been to the Oscars 5 times. I'm going to go again this year and live draw behind the scenes wherever I can get access. I can't get access to everything. They're very careful there, but I have some access and I wander around and draw. So
yeah, that's wonderful.
Thank you. And I pioneered that, Simon. I'm very proud of that. I mean, live drawing has been around for centuries, but using digital tools is something new that I think I was the first to do it. So,
well, I think you're definitely a front runner. You're at that sort of meeting point of that, combining the digital media and the art. And you mentioned the subway drawing. I follow them religiously because it's great to know that you're on the subway. You're literally just doing a quick, you've got the tablet there. You're using your finger as and you post them online, and they're always wonderful. So I'd encourage people to follow that. And of course, the work that you do, whether it's the New York Times or I know you work for many publications, the New Yorker, for example, long time cartoonist there and writer. And you're also a contributing writer, aren't you? You've also contributed pieces, you've done on air as well. So do you balance that, or, how does that work?
Yeah, I balance it. I think I've written some nonfiction essays for the New Yorker and the New York Times, op-ed pieces, and Washington Post. And it's usually something that I'm passionate about, I'm interested in my world, or something related to my world. Like when the Charlie Hebdo murders, I wrote a op-ed piece for the New York Times. Yeah, it's a balancing act, and I've learned. I have a newsletter, and I also work on Medium.com. I have a column there. I've learned the joys of using a drawing, but also writing with the drawing. So the drawing, they complement each other. And I've done that with my public speaking too. So when I talk, the TED talk I did, I've done on numerous TEDx's, but I use whatever ideas I'm trying to get across, I will use cartoons behind me to highlight what I'm saying, or to make a point of what I'm saying. Because I think humor, and I'm sure you agree, I know you agree, humor is a great way to get at important topics. Sort of slip it in there. You've got people's attention, you make them laugh, their guard is down, and then you can talk about something that they may not want to read about or think about. So it's great.
I couldn't agree more, Liza. And I think what's incredible about your work is you can tell a whole story in one image. And you can also make people think, and I suppose this is where the debate comes in for many, but you can change opinions. You can use that, maybe sometimes it's that hint of humor that helps also a difficult subject move on or move forward, or to be viewed through maybe a different lens. And I think having the ability to do that through a cartoon or, a drawing, it's an incredible skill. And it's also a great contributor to helping some of the trickier moments in life. Sometimes it softens them. Sometimes it makes you think about things a little bit different. Sometimes there's a bit of political humor in there that pokes fun maybe and makes people think about things in a slightly different way. But getting that balance right, you mentioned Charlie Hebdo, and I was going to raise that obviously, and the op-ed pieces that you've written, etc. But it does show you that it is maybe a fine line, if that's not too not the wrong statement to use, but getting it right, it's an art. It takes a lot of thought, and yet it's mixed with a creative, passion and flow and skill. And I suppose from submitting your work as when you finished college and submitting them into the New Yorker and going, oh my goodness, they got accepted. I'm sure it was very exciting.
That was really thrilling.
Many moons ago. But what about that, Liza? What about what I'm saying there in terms of the importance of that work and its ability to really move people, both, mentally, emotionally, as humans?
It is a fine line. It's a very delicate line to walk. Trying to think of how to answer you. I mean, I'm worried that political cartoons are becoming less and less relevant because there's so much pulling people's attention, and memes and video clips of comedians are all great, but they are making political cartoons a little less important than before the internet. I mean, on the one hand, I felt like the internet was great because it got voices out there. It helped me. I got a lot of attention through Twitter and a lot of work through Twitter. But on the other hand, it's now I'm finding it harder to keep to get anybody to pay attention. So I don't know. I mean, with Charlie Hebdo, and also the Danish cartoon controversy happened. If your viewers may not remember that one, but that was right as the internet was becoming a thing, and extremists used these cartoons that were commissioned by a Danish editor to draw Muhammad. They were used by extremists to rile up their base, and it caused a lot of destruction. So the internet there was at fault for that, I think. And so I think we still have that problem because humor can be misunderstood so easily. Now, that's the biggest problem. You have to really think twice before, 3 times or 4 times before you finish that cartoon and put it out there on the internet, because I've made some mistakes, and I learned my lesson. Nothing horrible, but I've learned. And since I don't really have an editor, the New Yorker is a different system where it doesn't. they don't edit me really. They either buy something or they don't. So when I'm doing political cartoons for myself, I'm my editor, so I have to be careful that I'm sure I'm saying what I want to say, and it's going to be received. And you never know how it's going to be received. It could be received poorly or wrongly, or I just didn't understand that I was going to offend somebody. So yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose that's exactly the fine line we're touching on, that it's on one hand it can shape opinions and move people, on the other hand how it's received by people can be very different. And the rules are always changing, and the trends are always changing, and the cultures are always changing, you know.
Yeah.
And I suppose the tools, and at the moment we're in this, you know, resurgence of the importance of AI, and there's lots of you know, things like Mid-Journey and tools that are out there where people are creating, in inverted commas, art, where actually it's stitching together stuff that it's trawled from the web.
Yes.
But it is a very interesting time. And what led you to being this sort of creator of this digital live drawing, Liza? What was that, just a personal passion, or was it something that you really feel strong about?
Yeah, I just happened on it, actually. I was given an iPad as a gift back in 2014, I think. And I was watching the US State of the Union address they have every year, and it could be pretty boring. But at that time, I started drawing what I was seeing on the TV. And this app I use, you can tweet it out immediately. And my drawings at that time, and they're still like this, are kind of bold and colorful and very painterly almost. But I put them out on about what I was seeing, and with maybe a snarky comment in the tweet. And I noticed that it got attention. People liked that. Nothing was happening like that on the internet. And this is 2014. So I just kept doing it because I enjoyed it. It's another form of communication with my viewers. Another, you know, like, we're all watching this together. Isn't that weird? Isn't that tie weird? Isn't that, you know, that thing that the president said, bizarre or whatever, and people can share it. So that's how that started. And then I began to get employed to do it here and there. So I'm not hired a lot, and I'm always looking for more people that want to hire me to do that kind of work, because it's actually a quiet form of journalism that I don't think a lot of the legacy media quite are interested in or understand. But I think a lot of people enjoy it because it's visual.
I think you're spot on. I think a lot of people are enjoying it. I think it's certainly a growing trend, and something that you're pioneering. And, you know, whether it's the New Yorker or the New York Times or the Washington Post or CNN or CBS, you know, that they're all covering these major events. We're all watching the things that happen around the world. I know you mentioned the Medium platform earlier, and I know you do things there, but you also use Substack, right? And you know, like for example, you know, the terrible devastation that's happened in Turkey recently, and, you know, you're able to put out things there and sort of, you know, it's sort of it's an instant visual reminder that we're all in this together. We're all watching it together.
Yeah, right.
You know.
It is a global, that's your podcast, it's a global world now. And I've seen in my lifetime, I've certainly seen that change. And so what better way to connect with other people is than through drawings? Yeah.
100%. And I'm very jealous that you'll be backstage at the Oscars. That must be quite interesting. What did
you say? I don't want to mischaracterize what I'm doing. I'm not backstage. I wish I was. I've tried, but I get to wander around the red carpet, and I get to go to the kitchen. I've met Wolfgang Puck, and I draw the chefs, and I get to go to the dress rehearsal. So it's stuff like that. And then I go in the media room, which is where all the media is during the broadcast, and I draw from the monitor. But when they win, they come into the media room, and they're just the winners are standing right there, and we get to ask them questions, and I draw them. So
that's wonderful. What a great
experience! Fun. I love movies and films, so for me, it's thrilling.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. So whether it's a state of the nation, whether you're sitting on the subway, whether you're at the Oscars, right. You're always drawing, which is fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, look, I want to move on a little bit. Thanks for sharing that with me, Liza. I want to move on a little bit and ask you a few questions about you, because I like to bring some elements of the individual to these discussions. And
Okay.
I want to ask you, first of all, about your own learning styles. It's obvious that, you know, you work very much in a visual medium through art. And when you're learning things, though, do you learn visually? Are you watching YouTubes? Are you reading? Are you listening to audio books? Are you just not bothered with all of that and you just want to crash out and put Netflix on? How does that world work for you when you're onboarding information, whether for your work or just for pleasure?
All of the above. I think Nora Ephron said, the humor writer, everything is copy. So and cartoonists are like sponges. We soak up the world, and so even watching Netflix is education for like what's going. I mean, we as cartoonists, we have to keep our pulse on the culture. At least that's how I see it. What's going on, what people are talking about. You know, I've done a White Lotus cartoon. You know, so I don't know if that's you. I don't know if you see that in Ireland, but it's a TV show anyway. And that's a challenge, is to be in touch with what's happening abroad culturally as well. I'm more focused on the US, but yeah, I read. I listen to audiobooks when I go for runs or walks. I like nonfiction, although in the summer I try to read fiction to get out of, just to loosen my mind a little bit and read stories. If I have time to read fiction, I'll read it, but usually I read nonfiction to learn something. During the pandemic, I ran a lot and I would listen to great books on tape. So many. I listened to so many books on tape. Nonfiction.
It's an interesting medium, isn't it? The audio listening to a book. You know, it is very helpful for a lot of people, particularly if you're running or you're outside exercising or you're doing something else at the same time.
Yeah. Or driving. Some people.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I had to turn off my work brain by 6:30 or 7 and make dinner with my husband, and we watch a show on TV, or a movie. So yeah, that's my
you're not reaching for the iPad then and doodling away while you're watching. It's all off by then.
I try not to, unless it's the State of the Union or some kind of awards show.
Yeah.
Or all the hearings that we've had in the US recently, the impeachment hearings. I drew those from my phone, my iPad here at home.
Very good. And while we're on the subject of books, you're no stranger to the world of books, and you know you've authored 18 books, I think. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience? When did you start writing books? What's the last book that you published? What's the book that you're most proud of?
Well, when I was in the 80s, I had an idea for a children's book. That's where it started. And an agent I met socially, she said, that's a great idea. So I created a template, or a dummy, they call them. And she ended up selling the idea to Scholastic. And there were 7 of those in a series of early readers. And they were all my illustrations with minimal words. And that was great. And that led to, that I have 2 other children's books too since then. And then when my first daughter was born, I was worried about being a mother of a daughter, just because I'd heard stories, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun to have a cartoon book about being mothers and daughters? So I edited a collection of cartoons by women about that subject. And then a bunch after that, similar type of books, fathers and sons, husbands and wives. And then 2005, I did a book. I was always aware that there weren't many women in this business. I knew that going in, and I didn't really pay much attention to it. I just wanted to be a cartoonist. But around 1999, I started thinking more seriously about why are there not more women drawing cartoons? What's that all about? And I started researching, and I found women at the New Yorker in 1925. There was one woman in the first issue of the New Yorker magazine in 1925. And I began looking more closely at these women. This was pre-internet, or pretty much pre-internet, so I didn't find a whole lot, but I found enough to convince a publisher to publish a history. So I wrote a history of the women cartoonists of the New Yorker, and that came out in 2005. And then couple of other books. One about a couple about feminism and cartoons, and I'm just being very quick to tell you. And the one I did with my husband, who's also a New Yorker cartoonist, Michael Maslin. So we did a book together called Cartoon Marriage. And then last year, or 2017, the New Yorker had up until around that time, the women were still a smaller in number, but we noticed that they were now equal. There were the same number of men and women in one issue. So I began to think, I need to update my book. So the publisher agreed, and we did a new edition of the book with new material and new interviews, and a foreword by David Remnick and the cartoon editor Emma Allen. And that came out in 2022. So just last year. And I'm very proud of that. It was a labor of love, no money in it. I just love having that book and having had done that research and lived with those women and brought attention to them. So,
well, congratulations on all the success of the books, because there's a great collection of books that you've been published through over the years. And whether it's Funny Ladies, and that story of from 1925 onwards in the New Yorker, and Cartoon Marriage, I think, is great. That's a wonderful a wonderful book. So thanks so much for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
The other thing I'd like to ask you as well, as we move away from books and top authors and all that kind of stuff, is about your own life and about people that inspire you, because it's not very often you meet somebody who's made a life and a career from drawing, and being involved in that sort of media world and that art world. So what inspired you? Where does that inspiration come from? Was it a particular person at some moment in time? Have there been people in your life that have contributed to your journey that when you look back on it, you think, you know what, I learned so much from that person, or I really looked up to that person, or that person helped me? What does that look like for you, Liza?
There's no one particular person, although I would credit my mother for introducing me to and encouraging me to draw cartoons. She, I don't know if you or your viewers know James Thurber, but he was a cartoonist in the 30s for the New Yorker, and I would trace his cartoons, and it made my mother smile. So I was hooked. That I realized I could use drawings to make people happy. So that her encouragement, my father also encouraged me, but she was more directly encouraging. And James Thurber was a huge influence. His work is very simple and loose. It's not political. And then the political cartoonists of the time, like Gary Trudeau and Herb Block, as I mentioned, and international cartoonists that I began to learn about, Ralph Steadman, Sampe. These are all people that I admired and looked towards. But there's also somebody that that's not a cartoonist that was a big influence. I like to mention her is Jane Goodall. And I know it may seem odd. If you guys know, Jane Goodall is the naturalist and scientist who studied chimpanzees. And I remember noticing her as a child and being so enamored with her because she was so headstrong and quiet and principled and got her work done and has changed the world. And I admired her for that. And since I'm a quiet, headstrong person, I could relate to that. She was a role model in that way. So, yeah.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. That's wonderful.
You're welcome.
I like those a lot. The other question that kind of relates to that again is the best advice you've received. It might be that sort of aha moment where you've gone, oh, I wish I'd have known that sooner. Or is there some advice that you've picked up along the way that you've held on to that helps you through life? Or maybe it's just advice that you often pass on to others that you think is useful for us to hear.
Mm-hmm. I don't really. I mean, I think about my father, who was he was a physician, but he taught me to try new things and explore new things and never be afraid to go out of your comfort zone. He's the one that took us to Rome when I was 16, and I think that was a huge change for me. It's like doing something scary, but new and fascinating. And so I'm always, and I just think that that's what you have to keep doing if you want to stay creative and relevant, is just keep trying new things. And that's probably why the live drawing thing happened. And my family teases me because I'm the one that I'm an early adopter of anything technological. I'm just like, I get that app or I get that new device or whatever, and I have to try it. So that's what I would say, is just keep drawing, keep trying, keep exploring, because the more you explore, the more you learn about yourself and the more you learn about the world around you. So
I think keep exploring is great advice. Thank you. What about the year ahead as you look forward now? I mean, the next 6 to 12 months, how do you plan? How does it work for you? Is there anything you're hoping to achieve? What are you focused on?
Well, speaking of exploring, I am going into a new field. I'm not giving up cartooning by any means. I'm still exploring that and doing work for the New Yorker. I still work for them in the live drawing. But I'm developing a documentary based on my book, Very Funny Ladies. So I want to do it, and I am going to do a documentary about women cartoonists, not just in this country, but women cartoonists internationally, because I know them personally, some of them, but I just think it's an interesting way to look at the barriers that women have had and how so many of them still have, and how they've overcome them, and how how we can learn so much about women's lives through drawing and through cartoons, because cartoons are about life. So that's
Sounds very exciting.
I'm learning about writing for film, and I'm written a fiction screenplay as well, because I think cartoons and film are so closely related. They're like cousins, first cousins. So it's and for me, it's a natural next step. So
yeah, there's something in that visual world, whether it's that you mentioned the White Lotus earlier, and to answer your question, I think most people in Ireland have blasted through both seasons.
Okay, good.
The minute they dropped. But I must search out your cartoon, because that's one I missed for some reason. I don't remember seeing that. So I must.
Which one?
Did you say you did a cartoon about White Lotus?
Yes.
I must dig that out, because I don't know why I didn't see that, because I see most of the things that you put out, but I must go back and check that.
All right.
But yeah, so you're in the screenwriting world, you're in the production world. That seems like a very exciting time ahead. That'll be very interesting.
Yeah, it's certainly keeping my head spinning.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I suppose the other thing before we finish up, Liza, is I want to ask you if there's anything else that I haven't mentioned that you'd like to bring to the attention of our worldwide audience. And also, if people want to get in touch with you, whether it's to join your newsletter, follow you on Substack, get involved with the books, find out more about the documentary, when you can share more information, where's the best place to send people to?
There's a couple places. My website, lizadonnelly.com, is an aggregate of stuff. You can see a lot on Twitter and Instagram, again, Liza Donnelly. And my Substack is lizadonnelly.substack.com. I think that's the URL. But if you just go to Substack, and you can subscribe, and I do it 5 days a week. I post something either about politics or about drawing in the subway, or sometimes just a cartoon reject, because as a cartoonist, we all do a lot of cartoons, and most of them don't see the light of day. So and I have a paid side of Substack where you can become a supporter of my work, which I really appreciate, because I think Substack and Medium, you can also find me on Medium, where I do similar things, maybe even more lengthy articles on Medium. But both of those models are a great way for creatives to earn more money, because it's so hard with the media changing so quickly right now, and so drastically, that it's often hard for the creatives in our world to connect with their viewers immediately and to get paid. So there's so many gatekeepers. So, and also LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm even on TikTok. So
you're everywhere, Liza.
Yeah, no, I love TikTok. TikTok inspires me because people are so funny and creative. It continually makes me laugh and smile.
Well, look, as an early adopter of technology, as you mentioned, I'd expect nothing less. I mean, I'm sure you're on TikTok. Of course you're on TikTok.
I've tried Snapchat, but I didn't really like it that much.
Very good. Well, look, I mean, that brings us nicely to the end of this episode, I think, today with Liza Donnelly. You know, a visual journalist, a writer, a cartoonist, a contributor, a documentary writer, a screenwriter, a contributor, you know, whether it's the New York Times or CNN or the Washington Post or the New Yorker, everywhere.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd encourage everybody to catch up with Liza and her work. And I will be looking forward to the next time you're on the subway, because I like getting those.
Thank you.
I like
And
that.
I hope to come to Dublin again sometime soon. I love that city.
Be great, yeah. Well, listen, thanks to everybody who's been watching or listening around the world. Thanks for watching this episode with Liza and I. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, do all the things I need you to do to help support the podcast. And I hope you'll join me back here for some more discussions with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. Liza, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been wonderful to catch up with you. Thank you so much for taking some time.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.